Alright, I'm back, apparently. Yes, anyway. Yeah, I wanted to do more of these, but, yeah, timing, such. Camera's way off, but anyway, it doesn't matter. You don't want to see too much of it anyway. So, yeah, I figure we'll go back to this self-portrait and see what I can do with it. See if I can fix it and such. And, still don't know what I'm going to do with it as a painting, where I'm going to go with it. And whether I'll just try to put it in some kind of finished condition and then move on to another one. But I do want to try some style differences. So maybe the next painting I start, I'm going to try to do with just a knife or something to get myself more comfortable with some different ways of painting instead of this use as little paint as possible technique. Anyway, so subject is, so first we went over sort of the idea of where our consciousness comes from. Its fundamental purpose is just as this behavior creator. You know, we're just reflexively reacting to a world, and you know, we feel, and the substance of the feelings are to create something like danger, not danger, you know, something positive, negative, to create some kind of force inside of us that would tend us in a direction. And as that has developed through evolution, we have what's now called the psychology. You know, a tendency of our disposition in terms of how we react to circumstances. And the basic generator is still the biology comes first, you know, the food, the air breathing thing, you know, the sex thing. These basic biological functions come first, but they happen within the context of this psychology that's now something more than just an individual fighting through a liquid or the ocean or some other thing. It's not just about, like for most organisms on Earth, it's just about the mouth and the ass and moving through the environment and putting as much stuff in your mouth as you can so you can lay as many eggs as possible and then die and do your biological function of replicating your molecule. And that's what underlies it all. Except now that, yeah, we do this in a very eccentric way, this very complex way. It's complex only because relative to everything else it's complex. I mean, relative to the non-complexity of, you know, the simpler organisms just doing that eking thing, that, you know, get me through to tomorrow thing, you know, and satisfying the necessity of acquiring the physical structure, the physical survival, you know, the survival game. And that's, you know, largely what it comes down to. There's not much else going on here but a survival game. Well, that seems way too light, right? Who cares? We'll compensate. It needs to be kind of light. We'll just mush it in here, get this out of here for now. Just want to get some of this dark out of here. It's just too dark. So we'll get it out of here for now, and then we'll fix it when it dries. And such. Alright. And so yeah, and so now we have this more, the reflexes just get more complex in some organisms. Some organisms, they work fine. Mosquitoes have been doing the same thing for 300 million years. Some designs, crocodile, have passed the test of time, as they say, and they function well enough. They don't have to do more. They do enough. They do their job in terms of fulfilling the obligation of replicating the molecule, instead of doing it better than anybody else. You know, grabbing more resource than anyone else. So they don't have to go for a redesign. They don't need a redesign. You just can't do it much better than that. You know, it's just a great design. It's got all the efficiency it needs to do what it has to do to satisfy the conditions of survival, which are not very sophisticated. You know, they're not very demanding in some respects. They're very sophisticated. I mean, it just is about this. Just beat the shit out of everything else before it can beat the shit out of you. And once you have an upper hand in the game, it's harder for the contenders to take you down. I mean, there is just like in our reality, there's a certain advantage to incumbency, so to speak. You know, already having the place makes it harder for somebody else to come along and take your place from you. Being the master of a niche, it's kind of hard to take out all of the competitors, and so you're stuck pretty much. You know, when something's in the, you know, once it owns a territory, it's just hard to take something out of that. Once it owns a niche, it's got that advantage. Well, anyway, that's not really the point of this. I was just pointing out that you can do this life thing very simply, or you can do it more complex, and there's no rule that says complexity is bad beyond the common sense rule that says, you know, the more complex you are, the more high maintenance you are, the more resources have to go into your creation, and so that does create a problem. You don't want to be too expensive to produce as a machine, as a and so there is a necessity to conform to these rules of efficiency. You know, you can't get away with being, you know, you can't get too complicated, because then it's going to be too hard to create a copy that survives. But the fact that there are so many niches to live in, so many niches to exploit, means that it's, you know, it's possible to be quite complex and still make a living, so to speak, because nothing else is going to. It's almost, in a way, it's almost harder to take somebody down on those high, large mammal place in the hierarchy, because you know, you do have to be a very. It is a very tricky and difficult place to stay alive in. You know, to maintain survival in. You know, human beings have only been around for a couple million years, where many other organisms have been around for hundreds of millions, or at least many millions more years. And so we haven't even proven this design to be a very good design yet, in terms of it hasn't survived a long time in evolutionary terms. It's a rather new design, and it may not be able to out-survive the simpler machines like a cockroach. You know, in the long run, they might win the battle and take over the niche we have. You know, or some organism, you know, some bigger reptile. You know, the dinosaurs might make a comeback. There's no rule against it. It's no. Just because we're winning in the short term doesn't mean we're going to win in the long term, I guess is the point I'm making. And the exploitability of a niche is so dependent on you know, how well, how circumstantially lucky you are in terms of what kind of how the things you feed on sustain. Obviously, some really nice, some really somewhat seem like well-designed mammals didn't survive the last ice age. You know, the saber-toothed tigers and lions, the woolly mammoth. They seem like pretty hardy and durable monsters, and they didn't make it to the next round. So, you know, there's just no guarantee that because you're alive now, you're kind, that it's going to make it in the long run. So anyway, but we are a very complex animal, and that's the point I am conceding. You know, I'm not saying it means much, because all the complexity is just really about the complexity of warfare on a mass scale. Most of our complexity is devoted to the fact that we have become social animals, gang animals, and that we survive not as individuals, but as troops or tribes, or there's probably lots of words for that. You know, but it's just not like most mammals. We can't win on our own. You have to play the game as a team, or you're going to get wiped out by the gangs out there. The gangs will take you down. So you've got to have a gang too. And most of our psychology seems largely revolves around the maintenance of some sort of necessary disposition for fighting the gang, the interior, you know, gang war kind of thing. We're not fighting the war as so much as individuals, as we are within so much as individuals fighting the world, as a gang fighting the world. And now the gang hierarchy is the real test of where you're going to place, what kind of job you're going to end up with. So I did try to indicate that I was going to go in this kind of direction, but I mean, it's just like the colony of insects. The insects, the individuals are molded and shaped by chemistry to fulfill a certain role. We're molded by our experiences, by how we perform within the group, and how we do that will decide where you're going to end up socially, you know, as a winner or a loser, so to speak. You know, within this whole alpha concept comes into play in terms of you know, whether you're going to be on the side that's doing the dying and the fighting, or the side that's doing the breeding, you know, and the enjoying, so to speak. The ones that ride, you know, the best part of the wave, because they carry the important next generation's hope, so to speak, or whether you're going to be on the, you know, the downside, you know, being the one who has to be sacrificed for the good of the colony or the group or the gang. And so our psychology is sort of built, large parts of it are built around establishing those roles to play in the hierarchy. And sorry, I'd have to can't talk while I do certain lines. Require a certain amount of quietness in the body. I think. Yeah, I think they do. Anyway, at least the mouth is bigger, but it still isn't quite right. I don't quite like it, but we'll work on it. Yeah, so it's you know, there's different ways that different people, you know, different tribes of people, different races, whatever you want to say. I mean, throughout history, we separate from each other, and people learn different kinds of habits, and they have different rules that establish the game of the hierarchy. You know, who gets to be the king, you know, whether it's you know, merely something that's you know, there are tribes, I suppose, that are incredibly nepotistic, and that the hierarchy has to be challenged. You know, the son of the king has the first shot, and if he can just be mediocre, he'll be able to maintain his status. And in other tribes, the contest was always open, and whatever individual showed aptitude in terms of courage and bravery might have been able to win to be able to establish itself as the better candidate for being the one who runs the show, the alpha status. Some cultures, even with primates, it happens with bonobos, that it's your status, it's the status of your mother that decides your status in the tribe. So if your mother's the queen, so to speak, or the alpha female, then you'll be given privilege, and all you have to do is be able to maintain that status by not totally fucking up, I suppose, and you'll be guaranteed a more survivable lifestyle, probably, life condition. So there's some variability, and that's just this conditioning thing that happens in our psychology, and that's sort of the game too. Is that the whole thing, the reason why there is that in us, is to create that capacity to be variable. That's one of the assets of our style of programming, the way we're programmed, the way we're disposed and built, is the very fact that we can do that kind of stuff, which means we can adapt to different environments and different circumstances. So it's that adaptability that is in part responsible for a good measure of our success, and therefore it's obviously something we've retained, because we were as a species able to go into other environments, very hostile, ones that you would think would be very hostile, and we were able to survive because of that adaptability. So we could learn how to live in ice houses and do these different things that survival required in different environments, and that gave us an advantage is probably the wrong word. It gave us, well, it certainly is an advantage over what might have been our competition, but it would just give us a way of competing on many different kinds of fields. So we can play football, we can play soccer, we can play cricket, we can play whatever game the environment's going to require us to play. So if our competition is bears, then we'll learn how to fight bears and beat bears. If our competition is elephants, we'll learn how to play elephant games. Whatever the challenge is, we'll come up with a strategy that'll work against that competitor. And that's that's our advantage faculty, in history, and it's the advantage faculty that got us where we are. That's kept us, that's kept us here in the game, as still in the game. Like over that way. I have to get rid of some of this. I don't like it. Get rid of it with a better color, though. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so this is definitely the long version, right? I'm just kind of rambling on the subject of psychology, which you can go in so many different directions. But I do want to keep it focused on this evolution idea, and the simplest of the disposition, the simplest of our tendencies, which are the competitive nature. Right? That's one of the simplest things about us, the simplest to see and understand. Is the fact that we would be that we are very competitive. That's just something that's fundamental to this internal interior competition that takes place, for status within the tribe, within the gang, and we're clearly, it's a very controlling feature. I don't need quite that much of a square chin, but I'll fix that later too. Where was I? Yeah, the competition. Yeah, so we obviously have a very we do say, most people say those words. Many people would not find it offensive to have themselves described as competitive. It's a very common feature among people, is this idea of feeling a necessity or an urge or a desire or a kind of passion to succeed by some kind of, whatever the standard is, it's ingrained by the culture, essentially, mostly substantively, and that this is a fundamental driving force. It's not a minor thing. It's a very major thing in terms of function. Let's see, which one of these eyes? I have to choose one of them and do one of them over there, because they really don't exactly match. This one's either got to go that way or this one's got to go that way. We'll make each one go a little bit one way. How's that? Yeah, we'll compromise. So we'll nick this one a little this way, and we'll nick that one a little this way. And then we just have to move pupils around. Maybe that's all we have to do, but we might have to do more than that. Maybe we do. Where was I? So, in conclusion, no, because I'm not quite there yet. Mark here, so I know where I want to cut this off. Something like that, yeah, I think I can live with that, actually. I think I can. Still not pleased with this. Still isn't correct. Somehow. Some way. Still wrong. Oops, too much of that. Yeah, so we're competitive, and we're, just by very rudimentarily, very fundamentally, very basic, very deep inside of us, and that in some ways defines our comfort and happiness is how comfortable and happy we're going to be, or how comfortable is probably the right word. How comfortable we are is going to largely be dictated by how how we feel about our place, our status, competitively, and as stated, it is modified subtly by how what the culture values. So if the culture values intelligence, or the culture values physical size, there's different ways we can acquire satisfaction with ourselves. Being a ladies' man, or being successful in business, or there's lots of ways we can gain points in the competition, because our cultures are kind of diverse. So that's it's one advantage we have, I suppose, over some other mammals, where it's really all about how well you point your horns and run into the other guy. You know, it's a more complex fight that we're fighting. We can fight it on more levels, and so it's possible, you know, to be weak in one department and strong in another, and have that work out. You know, to have different ways to climb the ladder, a ladder anyway. You know, it's hard to say the ladder, because yeah, these are all different ladders depending on the culture you're in, and you know, the arena you've chosen to compete in, to acquire your I'm okay points. So anyway, so there's, you know, a lot of, we know that a lot of this stuff relates to you know, procuring females, and we get back to the biological function again. So it ends up always streaming back to biology, usually, in one way or another, in terms of what's really going on with our psychology, is that it's heavily influenced by you know, these biological imperatives of replicating and you know, successfully having, you know, whatever attributes are required, you know, to you know, to you know, master you know, to master is the wrong word, it's going to be, you know, I wanted to say it more carefully than my brain is coming up with in terms of this. You know, it's a complex relationship between men and women, and you know, parts of it, like are like everything else. Parts of it are completely driven by conditioning, you know, culture, and how we are maturated. Or, you know, some people might argue that in many ways our culture, you know, demasculates, you know, men, and you know, defeminizes women in some respects, because of some of the ways we overreact, or it might be called overreacting, you know, to the narrowness of the role playing, you know, where instead of seeing the meeker sex as the weaker sex, or something like that, you know, instead, you know, just taking things to extremes that are you know, excessively narrow, and then the pendulum swings, and the pendulum swings too far, and then they take away too much of the nature of the thing, and trying to compensate for, you know, an unnecessary or excessive rigidity, you know, obliging people to play roles that there's no need to have. I guess the point I just want to make is that it's all, I mean, saying it's complex is just kind of a, you know, it's kind of copping out, you know, to just leave it at some sort of, well, it's complex, and you know, you know, without saying, I mean, it's not that we can't describe it, it's just that it takes time to do that. I mean, I think I can describe it. I don't know. My ears are ringing. That means something? Yeah, I don't know. I think that's like a rule. It means something. My ears are ringing. It's near death or something. I don't know. It's just that my head is fucked up. Remains fucked up. It's still fucked up. Continues to be fucked up. Yeah, so definitely needs more blending work. I do want to, you know, keep the harshness of it in terms of the, yeah, in terms of the harshness of it, because yeah, I've gotten kind of harsh over time here. Time is taking its toll on my features. because I do want to leave in some of this messiness, but it is a little heavy. I do have to do something about the heaviness of it and the unevenness of the color. We'll have to work on that. Maybe I'll keep some of this up here and just let that dry and bring some kind of color down through here. I like that I got rid of that, so once that dries I think I'll be happier with that. Maybe I'll just throw on some hair and call it a day. So where was I? Okay, so we're still, yeah, so you know, the things we're competing for and competing over aren't all that complicated. We can really kind of admit it. You know, that this status thing is largely about, you know, certain prowess, you know, whatever, you know, winning over the ladies. That's sort of the competition. Proving you're more of a man or something, bigger, better, more fantastic, and that's, you know, we are largely playing a game like that, and you know, it's not much, we're not much more complicated than that. We're just fighting for status points, and you know, nothing else to see here. I mean, we're just kind of very mechanical in a way. Well, you know, we are mechanical. It's not in a way, it's just the definition of what we're doing. We're mechanically reacting, and we're doing it in this, through this mechanism of a psychology ordered by physiology in terms of its prime directive, which is survive and succeed. But the definition of succeed is variable, but largely does depend in the end on some sort of you know, evolutionary fact of a requirement that you're going to tend to be doing things that will tend to get your molecule into the future. That your ancestors did that, and it would likely be for you to be consistent with their functionality, you will likely have to duplicate some of the patterns of their behavior in terms to be able to likewise succeed in getting the molecule another generation into the future. And clearly you'll have the option, like, you know, I have chosen, to break you know, that functionality, even though it's billions of years old. All my ancestors successfully bred, and I'm saying, yeah, that was really dumb. You know, even if they did for billions of years. I have decided, my brain has seen a different kind of light and sees no function in that. Yet my entire psychology is still written, you know, in terms of its disposition, in terms of its fundamental disposition, you know, by what worked for them. So I still have all those desires, and I have the desires that help make them successful at breeding. I've just modified them. I've had them modified in me, let's say, through my life experience. So they're taking on a different form, different function. There'll be a different end game, a different result, and fundamentally it will mean the end of that chain of DNA. The programming that might be unique to me or unique to my family members will gain no future presence through me. But as I've stated, the psychology still exists regardless, and but that's the beauty of our the one grace of our mechanism is that we do and we can be modified by merely an idea. An idea can change us, change our entire perception, change how we react, change how we feel when something happens, change physiological reactions, change very fundamental conditions within our interior. Fundamentally changed by just an idea, just a perceptual conclusion, a redrawing of the mapping software. And it goes back again to that advantage of having software, of having the ability to adapt to different environments. So that the very ability that gave us the ability to adapt to different environments gives us the ability to adapt to different understandings, to change the software, to modify through experience the reflex. And there's not much. It's the best thing about us, I'd argue, because it keeps us from being cockroaches. It makes us capable of moving into the future in a progressive and rational way, not being myopic and closed-minded. It opens our mind, opens our options, but it still does require experience and knowledge and exposure and lots of preconditions to do that. It's not going to happen spontaneously. It's going to have to happen for causes to get to that effect. What else? I didn't, obviously, I never feel I've quite done the subject quite right in these kind of imperfectly, these rambles. It's a little hard to ramble on complex subjects because you just don't, it's hard to reach for the words, especially when I'm thinking about what I'm trying to do at the same time. It's hard to use your brain for both things. And I suppose I should I should pause properly in both areas. I should take some time to paint and talk about painting, and maybe take some time and then do the philosophy without painting. Like if I just stop and say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say that your psychology is held in a container of your physiology. It's held in the container is with the biological necessity. But there's lots of room inside of that container for all kinds of movement and migration. So there's lots of freedom in terms of how you associate. And so whether you associate what food you like, what kind of sexual preferences, lots of things can now be modified, can be diverse from any common rule. There's no common rule of this is the way it must function. You're not obligated you're not restrained. It's not even an obligation thing. It's just that there's nothing really restraining you. There's nothing stopping you from being programmed into very diverse beliefs, and pleasures and things that you enjoy and the things you are attracted to and the things that are repulsive. That conditioning, that programming, it can be very established. in very diverse, it can be manifested. See, that's the kind of thing, you're looking for the word and I can't find it. It can be manifested in very diverse ways. And it just isn't the same kind of rigidity that you would have in other organisms. And that's intrinsically interesting because it's not common. It's a little bit rare that organisms are given that ability, as most of them, unfortunately, don't have the option of stepping beyond the crude circumstances of their birth, much like an ant. They're just completely owned and obligated from the day they're born to a certain way of behaving, and they're just not going to be allowed to escape that, to become something better or something more interesting. They're not going to be able to, in their lifetime, experience evolution, where we have the ability in our own little lifetime to evolve out of our heritage, to escape the patterns of our ancestors, to do something they didn't do, to do something they couldn't do. Yeah, not exactly what I wanted to. It's not exactly the point I'm trying to make, but it's a point nonetheless, so we'll go with it. So let's see. Yeah, so I didn't really get to the point. I'm just trying to get that the brain, this consciousness thing, is all just an illusion inside this vessel. It just happens inside your head, and it's created this place where feelings are projected, where a sensation that is obnoxious, or a sensation of relief and comfort. It's mostly, I would say, sensations. The good sensations are basically sensations that take away tensions, that take away irritations. Irritability is resolved, and that's intrinsically pleasurable. But regardless, it's a place where the idea is risk and reward, and instead of being in this crude mapped world where the risk and reward is direct, either you get crushed or you don't get crushed, either you get food, you don't get food, instead of it being that simple, inside our psychology, the game is first played inside our psychology, and before the behavior takes place, we are given the risk-reward incentive of feeling good about it or bad about it, being worried, being nervous, being afraid. We do these things before we get crushed. We do these things before, and that way we can know, we can experience an understanding of the could-be's and the will-be's or the would-be's. I mean, some of the things we'll know will happen, and some things we'll know only as risk. And we'll have to measure those things against each other, and our brain will make decisions. But clearly it's happening inside our brain as a trial. Our brain is practicing life, in a sense. That's the whole function of psychology and consciousness, is pretty much to give an organism the ability to try living, to do it on a trial basis inside your head. So you can get some taste of it, and that's what it is, sort of is, a taste of it. You get, through fear, you get a taste of danger, of being eaten by the crocodile. Your brain provides you, through a memory or through a visualization and through an empathy, if you watch your friend get eaten, a capacity to taste a little bit of that, and say, damn, I don't want to do that. And, you know, that's not a good thing. So I want to try to find a way to avoid his fate. I don't want to be, you know, whatever crocodiles call, you know, a man which, yeah, the human burger. Maybe something with that. A little bit too stringy there. Where was I? Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really. I have greater ambitions every time I make a video, right? I do kind of wish I do a little better sometimes. But whatever. I'll get used to this. And so yeah, the last Spook video wasn't really saying much to me either. I watched a Matt video, and you know, he just does all this Whitehead. The universe is somehow relevant to the activities on planet Earth, and I think that's just wishful thinking. What's happening to us is only happening to us because of what happens when chemistry replicates. And when chemistry replicates in a manner where the replications can create mutations and you can have accelerated evolution through that process, is that organisms become complicated machines. And we're a kind of complication, we're a kind of complexity, but fundamentally the complexity is not the purpose. The purpose is still just the molecule replicating. That's the function, is survival of the machine. It means machine's survival is all that we're playing for. And there's no higher function, there's no higher purpose. The universe isn't finding consciousness an interesting phenomenon, or saying this is a good way for matter to manifest itself, or this is the way to go. And you know, somehow if we, you know, and especially, you know, they tend to wallow in words like love or beauty, thinking that these, you know, emotional experiences we have, that we find to be sensually comforting and pleasing and appeasing, you know, like you know, beauty soothes the savage breast, or whatever that whole line is with King Kong. You know, this idea of, you know, beauty making it worthwhile, or giving it meaning. You know, we're certainly, we can talk that kind of stuff, but it's really not relevant to what's happening. It's just the manifestation of the mechanism. This idea of romantic notions and all that stuff, again, is just a mechanism. It's part of the psychology, and it has a function in terms of creating devotions, making us passionate, making us willing to stoically sacrifice ourselves for another, because there are interests in the game that are the game we're playing, because it is a colony game and a tribe game and a family game. There's an interest in creating in me some sort of passion, some kind of biological interest I'm talking about, to you know, sacrifice this body for a body that's more relevant to my getting my genetic code into the future. So if there's some circumstance where destruction of this body will further getting 89% of my genetic code into the future, then those decisions will be demanded of me by the fact of this emotional character that's susceptible to love and devotion and passion and anger and justice and all those kind of emotional things. But those emotional things are not intrinsically grand and awe-inspiring. They're only awe-inspiring to us emotionally, just as climbing Mount Everest is only meaningful to people who find it meaningful. People who don't find it meaningful, people who think it's just cold and windy, and there's no oxygen, and it sucks. You know, those people see no point in climbing the mountain and beating the mountain and fighting with the mountain. They'd rather, you know, fight with a woman's bra strap or something. They like to find something else to fight with, to conquer. You know, some other mound to conquer. So they're all in the same category, and there's nothing magnificent in it. It's just the nature of the competitive animal. Yeah, mostly. Anyway, that's probably enough, right? I'm tired. Yeah, I didn't do. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to do better. But I'm just tired. That still looks weird. Yeah, well, I'll fix that though. The weirdest part is the chin, and that I'll put back. Yeah, I'm trying to find if I change the light.